Republic, Foreign Policy and Civil Liberties. Again, it's very nice to have you all here. It's a very exciting event for us, and we'd like to make it as nice and enjoyable as we can for you. I think most Americans realize that our country, there's something's wrong with our country, that we're moving in a wrong direction, a bad direction. And yet, a lot of people are looking sort of through a glass darkly as to what the reason for this is. And that's the purpose of this conference, is to bring together 24 of the finest, most committed, passionate, principled speakers in our country, libertarians, liberals, and conservatives alike, and to diagnose the problem that's facing our country and to provide the prescription for how we get out of this morass. Our speaker this evening is Karen Kotowski. It's a real honor to have Karen with us. She's a retired lieutenant colonel from the United States Air Force. She received her Master's of Arts degree in government from Harvard University, her MS in science management from the University of Alaska, and a PhD in world politics from Catholic University of America. Her final military assignment was in the Office of the Secretary of Defense in the Pentagon. She left the military to speak out against U.S. foreign policy. Policy of interventionism. Her articles since then have appeared on LouRockwell.com, American Conservative, Salon.com, Antiwar.com, and others. She played a featured role in the documentary Why We Fight, the movie documentary Why We Fight. And I think you'll find that she, along with our other speaker, Robert Scheer, tonight, share a common characteristic with the 22 other speakers at this conference, and that is that all of them are imbued with a deep sense of passion and commitment to getting this country back on the right track, a track toward freedom and prosperity and peace. Please welcome Karen Kotowski.
Thank you very much. It is a great honor to be here, to be invited to say a few words, and to be in the company of what is really fundamentally the vanguard of American freedom. If we indeed restore the Republic in one form or another here in the United States, it will be directly due to the people sitting here today. For Jacob Hornberger to have gotten everyone in the same room to talk seriously about this topic, this close to Washington, D.C., is remarkably visionary. Considering the very real threat the people in this conference pose to the political and economic status quo, it is also very courageous. Two questions have to be asked and answered before I can share the how, in my view, we are restoring the Republic. And in spite of what I'm about to say in the next few minutes, I usually believe in happy endings, so please hold that thought, if you will. First, we must ask, what is or was the American Republic? Secondly, assuming we can define the American Republic, can it really be restored? The outline and definition of the American Republic was put forth in clear terms by the Articles of Confederation. In 1777, this document created a limited and circumscribed government for the United States. The states themselves would be independent, peaceful, and would not conduct their own foreign policy, including the making of war. The 8th Article of the Confederation called for the states to voluntarily fund the federal government for the common defense and general welfare and to pay recently incurred war debts. The means for assessing this tax reminds me a little bit of Marx's old ideal, from each according to his abilities and to each according to his needs. But it was also fair. It is the way that churches, synagogues, and mosques informally communicate to their congregations what should be offered for the common good. This voluntary method encourages individual generosity, as well as thrift and accountability in the recipients. I'm not a constitutional scholar, and I'm not a historian, but it seems to me that the agreement put forth in the Articles of Confederation established a classical and workable republic, and that is a mixed constitutional government which embodies civic duty, virtue, social cohesion, and where there is a high devotion, fidelity, and regard for the rule of law. one thing comes through for all types of Republican forms of government, and this is the idea of partnership, consenting, agreeable, aware, and free partnerships between large and small states, between those people and states with very different talents, skills, and resources, but joined together for peacefulness and profitability. The Articles put forth such a partnership with a presiding administrative president. This worked well for the vast majority of Americans who were extremely busy at the time. They were working hard, building farms, homes, families, and industry, and learning how to be free. They were learning how not to be European peasants and serfs, and yes, how not to be nobles. But some Americans existed who, like modern neoconservatives, had a bit too much time on their hands, perhaps too much theoretical education and not enough humility. These Americans were beholden to grander, nobler ideas of government. They only needed a bit more governmental power to see their ideas implemented. These were the Federalists. We can view the Federalists as reactionaries, those who seek to restore conditions to those of a previous era. They wanted the late 18th century America to marshal her vast resources and potential under the guidance of a much stronger central state. These reactionaries, in many ways, wanted America to emulate the busy central decision-making bodies that ran the empires of Europe. In this round, the Federalists won. The Articles were abandoned, and we got a Constitution. The Anti-Federalists barely saved the Republic with a slim and ultimately weak set of restraints on central government power. We called it a republic, but like the transmogrified central state to which we would all later pledge allegiance, it did not exist for free enterprise, human partnership, and individual liberty. Most Americans are taught that the Articles of Confederation failed specifically on issues of federal revenue shortfalls, currency controls, and interstate trade. Our ancestors were told that a strong federal government would solve all these problems. Who would question that today? Well, let's see. The federal revenue demands are fully and righteously met each year, which, with excess monies, bountifully returned to the people. We certainly have no domestic or internal concerns with our currency, a lovely paper dollar that, to paraphrase Humpty Dumpty in Lewis Carroll's 1871 Through the Looking Glass, is worth exactly what the U.S. government bureaucrats say it is worth. And lastly, interstate trade is so much better off as a result of a strong federal government. Everyone knows that, right? Well, the Cato Institute did a study back in 1987 examining the pervasive administrative restrictions regulating all aspects of commodities and services exchanged between American states. These administrative barriers are considered rent-sinking behaviors, and these behaviors have steadily proliferated over the past 200 years. Furthermore, adjudicating interstate trade restrictions has been the primary focus of the Supreme Court throughout its existence. This internal trade protectionism costs a lot of money, matching dollar for dollar the cost of trade protectionism at the national level. The authors of Cato's 1987 study concluded that these costs are exactly what the Commerce Clause of the Constitution was designed to prevent. 20 years ago, Cato called for this aspect of the Constitution to be repaired. Naturally, it was not. Today, with the rise of the internet as a new marketplace, states are even more interested in manipulating and restricting interstate trade, not less. To answer the first question, we did have a radically fresh republic under the Articles, but with the Constitution, we received a new roadmap, one that in the mind of Jefferson and others would not stand beyond a generation or so. With the discard of the Articles and the independent libertarian thinking that was their underpinning, this country would be placed on a path to a place noted for its lack of civic duty, virtue, and social cohesion. A place where politicians balance their cravenness with arrogance and are wholly contemptuous of the rule of law. In other words, it would bring us to Washington, D.C. today. The second question is about the possibility of restoring the American Republic. Just as the Federalists argued in the 1780s, many today argue that it would be impossible and inadvisable to recreate or rejuvenate a Confederation form of government. That original style of American self-government. But would it really be folly to have a country of our size and wealth to embody real freedom?